so let's kick this off. We're gonna be, I'm gonna have to do probably a lot of cut and paste, or not on YouTube. I'm just gonna put it like that because it's gonna be more authentic.
Right.
So I'm very curious to know your story, and I don't know if you want to start with talking with how you got to know Summer, because maybe it's also interesting how we got to know each other, right? And then start talking a little bit about you and what you do and your teaching, and then it's Nola.
Okay. All right. So I actually learned about Summer through Scott Mason. And Scott Mason he's just an incredible person. He's the host of Purpose Highway. The funny thing is how Scott and I met is a friend of ours, Chris Sykes, who is also another amazing human being. He said, "Oh, you have to meet Scott." So he gave me Scott's number. And then I was doing something one day and my phone rang. And I picked it up because I didn't recognize, I saw that because I had put Scott's name in my phone without ever calling him.
All right.
So this name came up and I was like, okay, I did not call this person. Like, I haven't called. So I pick up the phone and I'm like, hello? He's like, hello. And I said, excuse me, but you called me. And he said, no, you called me. And I said, wait, my phone was sitting across the room and it rang. And he said, well, I didn't call you. I don't even know who this is.
Wow.
And we both just started laughing. We just started laughing. And I thought, Siri called him. Siri had to call. It was Siri's fault.
Yes, because Siri knew that you were supposed to call him and you didn't.
Yes, exactly. And we just hit it off. It was just such a wonderful conversation. And then we met, and then he started this mastermind group. And so we would meet, it was once a month, and this is before COVID.
Okay.
And then during COVID, he had started, he had gone through a transition from the printing company he was with, and now he was starting his own podcast. And he said to me, he always says, I have these wonderful people you should meet. I have these amazing, you're an amazing woman, and she's an amazing woman. And it's just so beautiful. He's done this, he's a people connector, he's all about network.
People matter.
But also it's with Scott, I believe, like Summer, I believe that they have this in common, and that is that they believe in connecting people in an authentic way.
Yes.
So it's not always about, oh, I think you can get something from this person. It's really about, I think you can establish a really healthy relationship and learn from each other.
Yeah, I love that.
So yeah, and Summer's like that. Summer is like she's like both Scott and Summer are like the Energizer bunnies, it's like they have more energy than anyone. I mean, I thought I had energy, but these two, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I think about them like these two have so much energy, and it inspires me to keep going. I'm just like, okay, Scott's doing it, Summer's doing it, I know this can be done.
I love that, because also there is different type of energy, and I think their energy is really generous energy. It's energies to give, it's energies to connect. It's to have that, because you can be energetic and just go and run,
yeah, that's true.
But I think Summer's energy, what I feel for her is really that openness, the generosity, that give you that space. So it's I love that.
Right. And they also have what I think is attractive, and what I'm attracted to is they also have an intellectual energy.
Yes.
And when Summer put us together as a group, I felt that, even though, we're such great distances from each other, but I still felt in our conversation that we were the second connection, right? Like that second meeting, I felt like, okay, we're building this. So maybe this is something. So when you reached out to me, and I was like, it is something.
Okay, so let me take a step back then here. What do you mean by intellectual energy?
So I think that, these are intellectual energy are people who are curious about the world, and curious about making a difference in the world. That's what it means to me. Beautiful. And so I tend to gravitate towards people who are that way, because I believe that I am that way. I'm all about really learning from people and not so much judging people. I have differences of opinions about politics, and race. And, you know, I have principles too that, you know, are important to me. And I try not to encourage people who have, I would say, an energy that is, that depletes who I am. You know, there are people who can suck the energy out of you. Like I'm okay with meeting people like that. I'm just not okay with living with people like that. You know, it's like, I just can't, I think of my life right now being 56 years old and the kind of quality life I want to have and the people I want to have around me. And I just don't have that kind of energy to try and live with someone who is disturbing my soul. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, I totally.
I don't have it, you know, and I'm all about education, but I'm not about compromising who I am to be around people who might have something, who might have something I need, but I don't want it from them. I don't need it from them. The universe will
provide me in a different way.
The opportunity to get that from others.
Yes, absolutely. I think protecting our own integrity and being authentic with ourselves is very important. So definitely respect that.
Yeah.
So you are a lecturer, right,
Yes.
at the university. So what do you teach?
So I'm a tenured college professor. I'm an associate professor, and I've been teaching literature for a long time, and I teach composition. And a lot of what I've done in my teaching literature is I focused on women's literature. I focused on African-American voices. I've focused on, in terms of teaching composition and argumentation, I really focus on students understanding the importance of learning is about being curious about the world, you know, and bringing your insight into understanding human behavior. And that through that, we can develop an understanding of these characters, and we can understand the world better, and we can understand ourselves and how we are interacting, you know, with these experts. You know, it's so funny because I think that sometimes when you are a student, you often think, okay, well, you know, they're experts, I can't argue with them. And I always tell my students, you have a voice, you have a right to argue, but you have to do it intelligently. You can't say, I feel like, no, it's not about a feeling. Right? You have to argue from a place of intelligence. You can talk about emotions later, but you have to really think about the intellectual argument that you are establishing. And it can be based on your experience, because your experience is valid and you can use that. You know, so
I'm so curious about your story. How did you decide to teach composition? And composition, so maybe then you can also explain a little bit better, you know, what form of composition? Is it a book, a novel? You know, because it's like storytelling, right? It's
rhetoric. It's rhetoric. It's really focused on argumentation. It's really focused on teaching. In a freshman course, you know, you're really trying to teach students how to develop argumentation, and that's really important. Not that they don't know how. I mean, listen. I always tell my students, you come into the classroom with a reservoir of knowledge. You've already been doing this. Now you're going to do it academically. So now you have to learn some new rules, which means you're negotiating, you know, how you write, how you use language. You're learning a different way of using language. You know, and the more you know that,
that's even more challenging, right? Because you're coming from somewhere that you actually already have all this knowledge, but we have to restructure, we have to deconstruct it. And
it's true. It's true, because it's about the deconstructing, like taking things apart and trying putting it back together. You know, making the familiar unfamiliar. You know, I've been talking to students about, you know, all of us are born into a world that already exists. So you have to figure out, like, how did you learn this? How did you become this person? Right? Like, look at the institutions that have created you, and how have you pushed back against those institutions to become the person you want to become? You know, that's all a part of the learning that you do in composition and rhetoric, you know, is really understanding that, taking things apart, putting them back together again so that they make sense to you. And then you have to make sure that you are communicating effectively so that it makes sense to others.
Right.
They don't have to agree with you.
No.
But it has to make sense.
Yeah, at least you need to understand it to be able to say I agree or I not agree.
Exactly. You know.
So what is your story? How did you get to that?
What is my story? Wow. I actually started out wanting to be a sportscaster when I was younger. I grew up in Arizona. You know, we were all about sports, living in the desert. And I mean the desert of Arizona, no running water, no electricity. But it was a rich, I would say this, that it was a rich environment for a growing mind and young minds. And the reason why is that because we didn't have all of these distractions with television, we were encouraged by my foster mother to really read a lot. And so every single one of us we're avid readers to this day. Like we just read, we love reading and love talking about reading. You know, that's probably why I went into teaching literature. I'm like, let's talk about it. You know, I have my it's so funny because my friends used to say, I just want to read the book. I don't want to talk about it.
Well, but I totally understand it, because when you talk about it, you process it, you digest it, you bring it to the next level. Otherwise, it's just going to be gone, right?
Exactly.
You read so much to make it really stick.
It's processing that, and it's also processing, you know, how we understand the world and ourselves. It's, you know, it's deeper. You know, I went to a movie with my sister-in-law many years ago, and I started talking about the movie. She looks at me and she goes, "Did we see the same movie?"
I promise you, it happened to me with a book. We were talking about a book of Dostoevsky, The White Knight. I was talking to a friend of mine, and they were like, "Did we read the same book?" I mean, we were talking about two completely different point of view and details. It's crazy, right? How we absorb.
I think I have to read that. I have to watch that again. So I you know, I think it's all stems from, you know, growing up and loving books and just falling in love with, it first was escaping the world that I was in, because I knew that if I was reading, you know, I could enter these worlds. And I was fascinated as a kid with the 18th century. Don't even ask me why. I don't even know. I can't even understand it. And then I started reading, you know, when you're a teenager, you start reading romance. And so I kind of combined these ideas of 18th century and romance. And I wrote this 1,400-page novel at 14. Wow. I didn't even know what love was. It was a romance novel.
But it's all based on the information you had gathered and collected throughout
what it was. I was just like, wow, you know, and I look back at that time and just like, wow, I think that was probably what really, it was almost like the seed, you know, that was planted in understanding the importance of digging deep and understanding the world, like being able to reorder it, you know, to recreate, like create it in the ways that you understand it, you know. And that's what writing became. Like, it was just such an incredible cathartic experience. You know, writing to me is, I think it saves me from, it saves me from it, let's just say it keeps me sane. I think writing keeps me sane. It really does.
Yeah,
you know, because it helps me.
That's the thing, right?
Yeah,
when we write, we take our thoughts and we put them down so we can look at them, right?
Right.
So it's that, again, that processing, the taking a distance. So I like the fact that you're seeing it as it saves me, it keeps me sane. Yeah, because otherwise all those thoughts will be just fighting for attention in our head.
Exactly. And I think as a professor, when I'm looking at my students' work, I get a little carried away, and I'm trying to control it, but I don't know how. Like, they'll write something and then I'll write them back and I'm like, oh yeah, and did you see this? And did you explain? And this is what happened in the 1800s. And I'm like, you really need to stop doing that. Even though my students enjoy it, it's still, you know, it's like, it just slows me down from getting the work done. And then I'm always saying, yeah, but you know, why
are you so hard on yourself?
To do it. I think there's value. I know my students really, you know, they enjoy it. And so it's just kind of figuring out pacing myself, you know.
Right, but don't be so hard on yourself. I mean, you are creating a lot of value. You're inspiring them to bring them to the next level, contributing, co-creating. I think it's beautiful, right? That's good invested time. I don't see that as. You shouldn't slow down on that. I think you should continue doing that. I'm sure your student will be crying if you didn't do that anymore. So literature, but then composition, and you're talking more about speeches. I can feel a bit of like politicians type of right, TED Talks. I mean, who are the people that come to your classes today? What do you think?
Well, you know, the multimedia is so important today in teaching. And so bringing in the voices of, so let me just talk about how I try to think about teaching in terms of, you know, what happened in the past and how does the past inform the present? And so when right now we're studying poetry, and we're doing a case study of Langston Hughes's poetry to understand, you know, who was this man? What was his contribution at a time when what it meant to be Black was changing, and was changing because Blacks insisted that it changed. You know, having that power and agency, being able to do that. And so we're looking now today, in the next couple of weeks, we'll be looking at Langston through Hughes's poetry through our own experiences about race. You know, so that it's about you. It's about you. Langston Hughes was writing to and for Black people, but we have a great opportunity to learn as a diverse community about what that means and who we are in this space, in this current space where we're talking about race. We are going to have difficult conversations. It is challenging and it is painful. We're looking at images that are very painful, but they're images that exist because these are things that happen. So what do we learn from them? You know, how do we learn from them? We talk about white privilege. We talk about, you know, the challenges we are faced with trying to understand the world in which we have been molded by through our education, an education system that sometimes does not recognize its own prejudice. You know, I tell my students, don't be so hard on people. Don't be so hard on people when it comes to race. Let's understand. Let's come from a place of understanding. Let's dig down and figure this out. I grew up in Arizona, and the curriculum in Arizona at every single grade level left out voices of color. How do you think that influenced the people of color, the few people of color in the class, but also how did that influence those, you know, white kids in class? What do you think it was telling them?
Yeah.
And this is a learning environment, what are they learning? Yeah. And now we're asking people to unlearn, and that takes time. And we need to, you know, I understand that we don't have patience. We have to be patient with each other so that we can learn from each other, so that we can make the necessary changes, but do it together. You know, and to me, the beauty of Black Lives Matter in 2020 was the coming together of so many people to insist on change. You know, and that's what I'm hoping, that we carry that forward, that my responsibility as a professor who is taking on these very difficult subjects is to make sure that I am not pressing upon students my ideas. That's not my position. I don't have any right to do that to anyone, but to lay out what is there before them and to have the critical discussions, to ask those questions that are difficult, you know, to make those statements. And I said to my students, you know, we are going to have these difficult conversations. And I hope is that our intention is to learn from each other. So if you think that you might offend someone, I would like you to do this. Preface your question or statement with, my intention is not to harm or hurt anyone. I said, because then it allows you to come from a place where people will open their ears and open their heart and minds to hear you.
Yeah, I love that as a premise, exactly, to really, you know, put ourselves on the same page. And I don't want to offend anybody, but I want to have this conversation. This is where I'm coming from, and really being open to hear other people's opinion. I love that. Yeah. So, wow, an interesting thing you're doing with your students. And so, you know, really interesting in how you got there. And I think I got quite an interesting picture there. And then it's Nola, right? Then you decided to
This anomaly.
Become an entrepreneur.
It's like an anomaly almost. It's like, okay, what is that? How did you get from here to that?
Exactly. How does that exactly fit with Arizona and reading a lot and start creating healthy snacks?
Okay, so here, the way that I've been looking at it recently is that, none of us knows our journey. None of us really knows where we're headed. I think that you can have a map and you can have an idea and you can hope for a destination, but you might not get there. You might not get there. In fact, you might find a side road.
Yes.
And then on the side road is where you rest, is where you learn, is where you grow. And then you might continue your travels. Hopefully you will.
Yes.
And I think that my intention was never, it wasn't on my mind to go into a food business at all. I was not thinking about at all.
You were so fascinated, busy with poetry and literature. I was like, what is this kitchen? Dirty kitchen?
It is kind of poetic though.
It's very poetic indeed.
But I was, I felt really comfortable in my life. I felt like I was finally able to rest in this space, in this place in my life. I was feeling really good and comfortable. And then I went from being a vegetarian and I became a vegan. And when I became a vegan, I became hypersensitive to my own digestive problems and thinking, I'm getting older. Like, why am I fighting with myself all the time? Yes, I want to eat it, but should I? And that kind of thinking, at some point in your life, you go, okay, look, you got to love yourself just a little bit more. You got to take care of yourself just a little bit more, and I just got to this place in my life. It's like, I'm so tired of having a stomach ache. I had a stomach ache most of my life because I was not paying attention to what I was eating. And that started a long time ago, living in Arizona. And seriously, I know this is disgusting, but my foster mother would go and get fat from the butcher at the grocery store. And then she would deep fry that fat to get that tiny bit of meat that was on it. And that's what we would eat. Like, that's
in South of Italy, they were doing the same. That was really delicious. I mean, and today that is coming back, right? Now this is coming, yes, absolutely. This healthy
that's coming back. That is, oh my goodness. But as kids, we didn't know better. We were like, that's crispy, it tastes good. It was literally, we were eating crispy fat. Crispy cow fat, Yes. And I think my stomach problems started. I remember I started with eating that way. And then I was just constantly thinking that I was making better choices. I went into modeling and then I became anorexic and bulimic. And I was just doing terrible things to myself. I was not paying attention to I think the sacredness of my body. Yes. And so when I turned 50, I remember thinking to myself, this is nuts. Like, why am I living this kind of life? I look healthy, but I don't feel healthy. And that's when I was like, you know what? I have to do better. I would like the rest of my life to not have a stomach ache, to feel better. It's like, and that's when I was like, okay, and I was already vegetarian, so it wasn't that hard to become a vegan because it just wasn't at all. I guess I'm not somebody who falls in, has these habits where it's like, okay, I'm not gonna, I have to have that cheese. I was just like, no. And then I watched What the Health and went, what the hell? I asked my family for my birthday, my 50th birthday, can we all watch What the Health together? My oldest daughter, she's like, I'm not watching it. I don't care. I'm going to eat cheese. I don't care. My husband and my other daughter, they did watch it and they became vegan for like a month.
Exactly.
It did for a month, but it did change the way I started thinking. And it made me start thinking about, that's Candace. That's who I was waiting for.
Yay, the cappuccino arrived.
So they did change, but I was, I know that when I'm ready to make a change, that's it. I'm done. I'm making the change.
Cold turkey.
So I started really thinking about, okay, I do like to snack. I am a snack monster, but how do I snack more consciously, thinking about my health? And so I thought, you know what, why don't I just make my own snacks? It just made sense. I like cooking. So I was like, okay, I haven't made anything like a snack or dessert since I was a kid, since I was a teenager. But I remembered when I was a teenager making desserts for my family. I never ate them. I never, ever ate desserts. And so, but I loved making them. And I loved I love the look on their faces when they would bite into like a coffee bun or a cream cinnamon bun that I had made. They were just like, so like the joy on their faces gave me so much pleasure.
Yes.
And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make something for myself. So I thought about, what kind of snack would I make?
Yeah. What would I love? Because you wanted to make it for yourself.
Exactly. So I started thinking about, okay, what are the snacks that I really love? And so I love, at that time, I really loved granola bars, but I had a problem with granola bars, that they were constantly breaking. I would find the pieces in my bag stuck to paper clips and pens and papers, This is why my dog is always in my bag. Always finding granola pieces of granola bar, in my bag. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to make my own granola. So I started out making my own granola, and then I was like, yeah, but I don't want to make a bar. I don't want all those crumbs everywhere. There's got to be a way to make, granola in a different shape or form. And so I started doing research, and everything I found was basically about eggs and all honey. And, as a vegan, I don't eat honey. So I was like, okay, what am I going to do? So I started thinking about my childhood and some of the crazy things I would do in the kitchen. So I just kind of, I felt like I went to this place of some deep creativity, and I was like, okay, let me try this. And so I started thinking about flavors. It was Thanksgiving at the time, and my family loves cranberries. And I hated cranberries. I actually hated them. But I wanted my family to enjoy my snacks. So I was like, let me make something for them. And then, so I first made the granola, and then I made the binder. And then I decided that, I'm going to make it into a ball. I was like, why not? It's easy to eat. So I started rolling them, and then they were about that big. They were huge. And I started giving them to my family, and they told me, oh my God, this is so amazing. And it's that joy, it's like, oh my God, that's really great. They like it.
I love it.
They were eating it. And then I realized something. I was like, wait, I could take some of these to work. And so I started taking them to work. And one of my colleagues saw me, and she's like, what is that? And I said, oh, I just made some granola balls. And she said, what is that? And I said, try it. So I gave her some, and she's like, oh my God. She goes, and then she came back a few hours later, and she's like, it's like I had more energy. I said, yeah, that's how I feel too. And so then I started giving to people around the college, and then I started to bring them to my classroom. And that's when things changed. I brought 10 different flavors to my class, and I asked my students, I said, look, since I'm already bringing you breakfast, let's change what I'm bringing. Because I was bringing them breakfast, and I was actually buying croissants. Don't tell my husband. I bought.
You were feeding your whole class every day.
Yes. We met three times a day, amazing. 3 times a week. We met 3 times a week, and I had 3 classes, and I would just, I would bring them food.
Yes.
It was that instinct of, and I always say that I said, when you break bread with people, there's a sacredness to that, yes. There's a joy that comes, there's a pleasure that you're having. And I was trying to associate writing with pleasure.
Yes, totally. It's 2 pleasures, right? The mind and the body, right?
Exactly. And I said to my students, it's a psychological experiment that I've been doing for over 20 years, and it works. So, but I asked them, I said, I'm going to switch. We're not going to do the croissants anymore. I've made some snacks and I'm going to bring them to you and you can eat them, as part of your breakfast with yogurt. And so my students were like, wait, it's vegan? And I was like, yes, why? And they were like, well, because vegan food, I heard, tastes like sawdust. And I said to them, you know what? I have to agree with you, maybe in the 1970s.
Right.
I said, but one of the things that I really, really believe in when it comes to eating is that food must taste good. I don't care. Being on a diet,
Yes.
diet and your food doesn't taste good, you're not going to stay on it.
Totally, 100% agree. It needs to taste good. It's a palatable pleasure, right? Otherwise,
Yes.
take a pill.
Exactly. So when I made them, my granola balls, I was like, they have to taste really good. Yeah. So that's the thing. I brought them in and they had them, the different flavors, and they were just like, oh my God, this is so good, Professor. How did you do this? Are you sure it's vegan? So I started bringing them in and they would ask for them. And I would have office hours and I would students show up out of nowhere, like students who weren't even supposed to be on campus that day. Like, Professor, do you have your granola balls here today? Can I have some? I want to bring some to my mom. I want to bring them to my grandmother. So I started getting the gallon-sized bags, and I would
like
bring
an
them.
Excel sheet. How many are you? Who knows who wants which flavor?
Exactly. Yeah. I would come home and do this, and my husband's like, "What are you doing?" And I said, "They like them."
Is this making us any money?
He's like, that how much are you spending? And I said, it doesn't matter. I said, they're happy. They're doing the work and they're happy about writing. I said, that's good. This is good for us.
Fantastic.
And so I started bringing them those gallons. A few of my students were asking for like a lot of them for their families. I was like, oh, okay. And I'm thinking that that's what they're doing until one day.
Hey, I'm having a party tomorrow. Can you just make me?
I know. I was like, finally, a group of them came to me and they're like, Professor, we just have something to admit to you. And I was like, oh my God, did someone get sick? They're like, no. They're like, no, it wasn't that. I said, okay, what happened? Like, so we want to give you these files. And I'm just looking at them like, what do you mean? And the Professor, so, we asked you for the bags, the big bags. We were taking them to other colleges and we were handing out surveys. And so if you look, you'll see that you should go into business. And I said, what? I was like, why would you do that? I said, because it's so good, Professor. It's so good. Like, we were eating all that junk and everything, but now we're eating healthy and these are really good. We just want you to know that you were teaching us about the argument and you said you have to have evidence in your argument. So we knew that before we came, we had to have evidence. So here's your evidence. And I was just like, oh my God. Yeah. And I was like, I'm not doing it. No. I said, well, I'm happy. I don't need to go into business. And like, Professor, just think about it. And they just kind of kept coming to me, Professor, are you going to do it? Are you thinking about it? And then I started thinking, my husband and my daughters were doing the same thing at home. They were like, I really think you have something here. I think this is something of value you can share with people. You're always feeding people. Like, I was like, yeah, but why would I do it? Like, why? I don't even know about food businesses. And they're like, well, my husband's like, yeah, but you can learn. And I was like, yeah, right. When?
Why? When? Instead of making them, you had a lot of time.
So I was like, so then I spoke to a business professor. I had a meeting with him and I talked to him about my concerns, and how I thought it was a good idea, but I wasn't really sure. And he really talked me into it. He says, you know what? You're concerned that you don't know why you're doing it because you don't want to go into it it's not about the money for you. Mm-hmm. He said, so what is it? And I said, well, I said, my students have really been so supportive. I have I've had such great experiences mentoring all of these years, not just students, but faculty and staff. And so I said to him, if I did this, is it possible I can marry this idea of the business with supporting mentoring programs? And he said, make it a part of your mission. Yes. I said, wait, I can do that? And he said, yeah. And so I was like, I came home and I said to my husband, I think I can do it. I think I can start this business and really support, the community I really want to, which is because I truly and deeply believe in mentoring. I've been the benefactor of such amazing mentoring relationships and they changed my life. My life could have gone totally different had I not had these mentors in my life. There's no doubt about it. It could have gone totally different, especially for someone who's coming, who's grown up in poverty. And then all of the bad decisions of the people that, I grew up with, so those mentors changed my life. And my students, even mentoring my students has changed who I am, made me a better human being. And so I thought, yeah, this is great. I can do this. I can wake up and do 2 jobs. So I remember starting and that's basically how it started, like the idea of it growing inside me and making, and then living with the idea. I think that's what it was. Like, it took me a while to embrace the idea because I kept thinking I'm a reluctant entrepreneur. That's who I am. I'm still reluctant.
Isn't it that sometimes the more you don't know, the more you're going in with, not the expectations, I'm here to make business, to make money, versus I'm just making this delicious food that a lot of people want. That actually takes off also that pressure.
That's true.
Of performance, because you're not doing it for the money. You're doing it because of the bigger purpose of feeding and giving back.
Right. Yeah, that's true. That is true. It's a different feeling. I definitely don't feel that kind of pressure. Although my husband likes to pressure me.
He's not very successful.
We need investors now. We need investors.
Yes, exactly. Now it's time to go and look for venture capitalists and scale up.
That's it. That is exactly where Nola is right now. It's like, my husband is in my ear. He's like, okay, we can't do this unless we get investors. And it's true. I was thinking, I'm learning, I am learning as I am growing into an entrepreneur. I'm still growing into an entrepreneur. I still make mistakes. I still, sometimes chase shiny, lights when I shouldn't, but the good thing is that I have people around me who are kind of like there to kind of check my activities to say, okay, no, you're not doing that.
I love that. And going into this next step is going to be another wonderful learning journey, right? Because that's really gonna ask you to go again outside your comfort zone, embracing again discomfort and having to face those skeptical investors.
Listen, I have lived outside my comfort zone for 3 years. I have now made my discomfort comfortable.
Beautiful. That's
I'm pretty comfortable in my discomfort right now. So my response to people now, like before, people would call and say, oh, we're so excited to be a part of it. And then I'd find out they want something from me. And then I was like, oh man, that's just like, I just invested all this time in this company talking to me, and it's just a waste of time. So now, I understand now. So I tell everybody, I want to treat every human being with human dignity. So before we get into a conversation, can you please tell me what you want from me?
Love that.
Just tell me up front.
Protect yourself. Exactly.
Just tell me what you want. And then I can tell you if we should continue the conversation, because I don't want to waste your time and I don't want you to waste my time.
Yes, authenticity.
And I'll follow you on Facebook and I'll follow you on Instagram. But this is not going to work out.
Oh my God, this is so great. So Margaret, this has been really, really interesting. And I'm sure that, you're going to find investors to grow. And, maybe let's see if one of my connections maybe can help out. Let's see if this podcast going live will be boosting a little bit and bring some more luck to your side.
Thank you so much.
That. Oh my God, this has been so wonderful. I really, really love our connection through summer. Thanks to her to connect with each other, and thank you for coming to share your story with me. It's just been
you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for allowing me to be in this space with you. And my hope before we leave is that our relationship will continue to grow.
Yes.
And that this, I'm all about creating real community and authentic relationships. So my hope is that I will learn from you and you will learn from me. And then we can spread that and we can share that with others, our learning together.
Absolutely. That's exactly where I am as well. Let's create this community and really
Yeah.
build a relationship. I'm so excited that we connected and built, started building our relationship. So let's continue with that.
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being
Okay,
here.
thank you.